Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this latest live global INMA webinar, coming to you, in my case, from London, England, and we'll be hearing from people from Sweden and from Norway later today. My name is Mark Challoner. I'm the executive producer for the association. I'll be moderating today's session. A huge response from literally, I say this every week, but there really is, over 150 people have registered for this webinar from 45 different countries. And just looking down the list, I mean, from diverse places such as Nigeria, Croatia, Colombia, Norway, Brazil, Estonia, Japan, Jamaica, Vietnam, Zimbabwe, and everywhere in between. So wherever you're from, you're very welcome. I hope you enjoy this session. Just some house notes. The presentation is being recorded, and a link to that presentation and the slides that you'll see will be sent to you over the next 24 hours, just depending how long Zoom takes to upload to the ecosystem. And speaking of Zoom, and I know everybody is a big expert in Zoom these days after the COVID era, but if you scroll your mouse across the screen, depending whether you have a Mac or a PC, you'll find some icons. If you have a Q&A button, which you should have, you can ask a question of our speakers at any time at all. And I will make sure I get those questions to our speakers at the end of the presentation. We'll finish within the hour or on the hour. So there's plenty of time for Q&A. So please don't be shy, ask away, and I'll get those questions to them, as I say. So without further ado, let's get on with today's session. And it's all about, as you can see, robot journalism, which is a great, interesting subject, isn't it just? It supports a growing number of local newsrooms now, and one of the best in class is Bergens Tidende in Norway. The newsroom was in fact awarded 3 INMA Global Media Awards for its home sales website section, entirely populated, would you believe, with robot generated content. Incredible. Who'd have thought this a few years ago? Over the past year, though, it's generated more than 1 million page views, and it's now driving 5% of their article conversions of paying subscribers. It's an incredible story. So today we have the project lead, Jan Stian Vold, and the CMO, Celia Campbell, who will discuss the quality, the strategy, and the business news of automation, and how the robot has created a new revenue stream without any impact to the newsroom. In fact, I must tell you one little quick story before we hand over. I've always joked, people that know me know that I'm from the city called Liverpool in England. I'm a big fan of the soccer team there. And it's very rare for me to have 2 people, one from Norway and one from Sweden. We're both Liverpool fans too. So you'll excuse us if we talk football for the next hour. No, I kid you not. I'm going to go back to, firstly, over to Celia. I believe it's in Sweden. Is that right, Celia?
That's right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mark. Thank you. Thanks for having us today.
And the floor is yours.
Thanks. So I'm Cecilia Campbell. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of United Robots. And I thought I'd start by saying a few words about United Robots and what we do to put everything in context before we let the floor to Jan. So we're a tech company based in Malmö in the south of Sweden, and we're working with the media industry. We generate texts from structured data sets like sports results, traffic incidents, company registrations, or real estate sales. So we enrich the content with images, maps, graphics, or other media, and then we send the content to the publisher, either into the CMS or directly to readers or on sites or through apps or push notifications. So the vast majority of the articles we generate and send to publishers are automatically published with no manual tasks involved from the newsroom. Jan will tell you more about that. So there are 2 main things you need to know about us. And the first one is our track record in journalism. That's where our focus is. Our very first publisher partner was Swedish local media group Mittmedia. And in the past 5 years, we've delivered over 4 million texts to some 100 news sites across Europe and North America. And these are some of our publisher partners to date. We now have robots working in 7 languages: Swedish, English, Norwegian, Finnish, German, Dutch, and Spanish. Our new real estate project, pilot project with McClatchy, just went live this month at the Sacramento Bee. And we've just signed up our 2 first couple of publishers in Latin America as well. So we know there's concern in the industry that robot journalism is technically difficult. And that's certainly true if you're going to build your own robot or use a self-service tool. But we build a robot for you. And that's the second important thing to know about us. While we're a tech company, we don't sell tech, we provide a service. So we build the robots and then we help you train them to write to your editorial style and guidelines. And once that's done, the automated content generation begins. So we look after the robot and you get your text and images sent directly to your CMS, sites, or apps. And this is what the content looks like when it hits your site. As you can see, it includes things like logos with match results in sports, or satellite maps for traffic, and Google Street View images for property sales. So today our focus is on our real estate service. And the core value of the real estate content are the single sales articles. So this service means publishers can cover every single house sale in every neighborhood. And this is content that local communities, the readers in local communities really love. The texts cover basic facts about the sale and trends over time for that particular house, houses nearby, or the entire neighborhood. We also provide street view images of the property and satellite maps. And on top of the volume of single sales, we also produce top 10 lists. So they're based on things like highest price or size, or for any geographical area over any period of time. And this service includes alerts to the news desk based on what the publisher wants. So for example, we can flag particularly expensive homes or houses sold to any celebrities listed by the newsroom. Jan will come back to this as well. And in addition to the top lists, we can deliver trend or comparison text for any particular statistic, such as median or average price over any time span you like. The real estate content has a proven track record of driving subscription sales. And in fact, we have publishers who fit the different types of articles into all or some of the sections of the funnel. So it might look something like this. At the top of the funnel, free content which drives traffic and interest, such as news of celebrity purchases. Mid-funnel, you can use local top lists to drive traffic and engagement. At the bottom of the funnel, we know that people convert to becoming paying subscribers when they want to read about specific house sales in their street or neighborhood. And you can keep existing customers engaged by providing content they might not have converted for, but which adds value to their subscription, like comparisons of price trends across a number of towns or cities. And of course, whether you're driving readers towards a paywall or not, the traffic and engagement you generate will in turn drive your ad revenues. This is just an example of how you might map out the real estate content against your funnel. The point is, the more strategic you are in how you use the content, the more value you'll gain. And then just finally, the bird's eye view of automated real estate content in Scandinavia. This shows us that real estate is the best performing robot content in terms of subscription sales. And Jan Stian will cover this in more detail, of course. Other examples include Swedish local media group Gota Media, where the real estate robot has a conversion rate of 2%, which makes it the best converting byline across the group's 10 news sites. We also see that publishers who use the single sale text as a basis for a home vertical on their site can generate around 20% higher CPMs for this in-context premium inventory. So in the coming weeks, we'll be publishing a playbook with guides and best practices around deploying automated real estate content, which will be available to all of you. And with that, I think it's high time we hear from Jan Stian Vold at Bergens Tidende, who will introduce himself a bit more and talk about what they have achieved. Over to you, Jan Stian.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, and thank you guys for having me. I'm very excited about that. I work in Bergens Tidende, which is a media house in Norway, the largest media house outside of the capital of Oslo, and situated in the lovely city of Bergen. First of all, let me briefly tell you about the basic principles of the real estate robot. So I will not dig in deep into specifics. So if you have more detailed questions, I'll be happy to hear from you in the Q&A afterwards. But also don't hesitate to reach out at a later time. I'm happy to answer, at least try to answer. So just gonna, yeah. Okay, so the text robot produces an article for each free and open real estate sale in the local and regional market, which of course is quite a few. Since launching last summer, this now sums up to approximately 13,000 articles and about 30 articles a day. And a fun fact, this is about 1/4 of all articles published in Bergens Tidende in the period. The service has also been scaled to our sister title Stavanger Aftenblad and is soon to be launched in Aftenposten, the largest subscription paper in Norway. So I'm very excited about that. It's one of the joys working in a large media company like Schibsted to see products come to life in another setting than your own. Of course, the amount of article isn't a goal or a KPI in itself, but it proves a valid point, I think, how you with automation can produce relevant content for readers that you otherwise wouldn't be able to reach. Trick is to, in fact, make it relevant though, and I treat it like journalism, not an ordinary content stream. This is important to me. I'll get back to you on that point. It's the whole essence of it, actually. You should not simply do it because you can, and it will provide you volume, but because it will benefit your readers and your product. I think that should be the mantra. So I'll talk, as I'm saying, I'll talk a bit more about that later on, but first just a quick walkthrough of how it all came about. Best things often come from coincidence and luck of events. In 2019, our then editor-in-chief was a bit concerned that we weren't up to speed with regards to automated content. At this point, the whole concept was merely considered as just another buzzword in the newsroom. You know, the kind of stuff that makes old school journalists roll a bit with their eyes. I would know because I was the news editor in Bergens Tidende at the time. Amongst piles of things to prioritize, automated content didn't necessarily seem like a top one. But simultaneously, one of the groups in the newsroom did a workshop on how to innovate its journalism. And one of the ideas actually was to automate parts of our coverage of the local real estate market. This picture is actually not from the actual workshop, but they are my colleagues and they look very dynamic and workshopish, so it will have to do. Anyway, what happened was a top-down initiative from the editor-in-chief, but also a bottom-up one, which I think is kind of crucial. And also about the same time, United Robots, who already did a lot of work with Schibsted, reached out to us looking for a possibility to collaborate. Looking back at it, this was a perfect match, I think. I was set to change jobs, working in a new role as a project lead for new editorial products. And again, not going into details, real estate automation became the first project. Luckily so, I will say, because I inherited great work from my dear colleagues in Bergens Tidende, and I got to work with United Robots as well. So I started out in January, and in July 2020, we launched ta-da, which leads me to the content, which is, I have to say, closest to my heart. For me, coming from the newsroom and being a former reporter and editor, I look at automated content from a journalistic perspective. It's, I reckon, fairly easy to produce a lot of automated content, but the trick is as I said, to make it relevant. And that is the trick, of course, for all kinds of reporting. So what we basically try to do is to reproduce or imitate, if you like, all available parts of the editorial process. And this is what I call the imitation game. It's somewhat cheesy, I'll agree to that. But of course, automated text don't possess the feel and flavor a gifted and skilled reporter can add. A text robot can't ask the tough follow-up questions crucial in managing in manual reporting, especially in investigative journalism. Not for now, they can't, at least. I'll not go into the whole AE debate, but not for now. But most other parts of reporting can be automatically reproduced, given that you have sufficient data and the right tools. So I'll show you some examples of this reproducing. For me, this includes creating engaging headlines and lead texts. We've built a bank of about 100 different headlines, and we're still counting. It could easily be 1,000 if the volume was the essence of it. Fueling the headline machine is a set of rules that is created to make sure that the best and most interesting points find their way to the reader, which is, I guess, basic editing, really. Another thing to mention is trying to add the most relevant illustration and visualization of high enough quality. We use in the real estate robot in Bergens Tidende, we use high definition aerial photos, for instance. We also use a graph editor and have completely automated that process as well. And I'm particularly fond of this illustration showing a very, well, high-end building by the coast, by the shoreline of Bergen. And you can actually see the rather expensive cabin cruises and private beaches as well. So we don't always hit as well as we do with this picture, but I think it shows what can be done. This is a fairly interesting picture, I would say. And yeah, I'll have some other examples. I shouldn't be dwelling with this, but you can see there are some different kinds of visualizations as well. We have the aerial view, the street view, and even the panorama view. So, and as mentioned, we also got automated graphs, as can be seen here. All of which reproduces the how shall I put it, the journalistic look and feel of this product. When we are using the article format, these articles should appear and be conceived as real articles with real newsworthiness, which they have, in my opinion. So, and what we lack actually is a picture from the inside, which I guess would be doable if we collaborated with real estate agents, but we steer away from this because we don't want the articles to be confused with advertising. Which leads me to another aspect of the whole editorial approach to automated texts. We emphasize the journalistic value of them, which is important for me in Norway and in every part of the world, I guess. Buying or selling a house is one of the most important economic transaction you'll ever make, if not the most important. It can make you rich, or at least richer, or it can make you waste or lose a lot of money. And the importance of being informed and thus able to make educated choices in the real estate market cannot be stressed too much, I think. And this is the core of the relevance I'm talking about in these texts. They are helpful to readers, shedding light on areas of the market not covered well enough by traditional journalism. Not because traditional journalists can't, but because they obviously haven't got the amount of time to do it. So this is a picture of me out in the street of Bergen, trying to look like a man with a journalistic purpose and mission. I even got the mandatory arms in cross pose. Joke aside, this is actually important to me. And another important thing and characteristic of these texts is the combination of, how should I put it, the hyperlocal content with macro trends, because it really is as hyperlocal as you can get it. We actually write about you, your house, your street, your neighborhood. And this is particularly interesting to local and regional papers, I think, because most people never get in the paper, do they? Well, no, they actually do. If you buy or sell a house, which in Norway most people do a number of times in a lifetime, you get in the paper. I think that's a kind of an interesting perspective on these kinds of texts. So the articles start out very narrow, but we've added information layers to make it broader and then more relevant. You can dig into details of the municipality, the whole region, or even the whole country with a look back period of 10 years. So in my opinion, this becomes a rather dense package of information to use that term. Okay. So we got the content. We actually got massive amounts of content, and it can be perceived as a bit overwhelming. How do we target readers? How can the readers find this content that is relevant for them? How can we make sure that the right content finds its way to the right readers? And to be quite honest with you, we still have some ground to cover on this aspect. I think this is very much work in progress. We have taken some steps though in our sister title Stavanger Aftenblad, also situated on the west coast of Norway, which we have scaled, our ship that has scaled the service to. They have tested geo-targeting. That basically means that readers get content from their neighborhood on the front page. This has improved the click rates with between 40 and 80%, I actually learned today, which is quite phenomenal, I think, and makes it an obvious step for Bergens Tidende as well. We also have established a structure which lets the users sort information on various geographical levels. And of course, we use the front page to promote the best articles driven by the headline machine I just mentioned. And this is a part of this work I'm particularly fond of, because I've been in several years, I've been the front editor in Bergens Tidende, which always was that was a fun job. So I'm trying to use some of my skills from back in the days doing this kind of work. But as I'm saying, still I feel we can do more to make the service even user friendlier. So a map solution is in the planning. A better search is on the list. And how about subscribing to push alerts, for instance, every time a house is sold in your neighborhood? There are some possibilities to further explore her, and hopefully we'll manage to do so. So, yeah, this is how it looks on the section page. So I think I've gotten some questions earlier on how to get the newsroom on board. And I think that's a fairly interesting question. So I'll say something about. I'll try to say something about that. And luckily, as I mentioned, this started out in the newsroom, so they've been kind of committed all the way. Some of them, at least. But there are some learning points, I think. They're happy as long as the articles are sufficiently marked as automated content. And as you can see on the slide, we have disclaimers to make sure of that. The assumption that readers are getting confused by this content has fueled some internal discussions, but they don't know that it's automated. But with disclaimers like this, that's water under the bridge, I think. And some other aspects has helped to get the work, get the newsroom on board as well. This is I love showing this example. Just after launching the service, one of the richest people in Bergen sold his luxury villa. The real estate robot was the first to pick up on this, and actually was credited when Schibsted online business paper E24 a few hours later covered the sale. And we had several other examples like this. The robot is beating journalists to top stories. And this is, of course, a boost for the service. And I have to admit, I take some pleasure in it. I do. Okay. So, and also the automated texts were the base when we published a huge story about the 100 most expensive houses in Bergen last year. This was one of the best read and best selling stories at the time. I've talked with the newsroom about doing more of this stuff. People love listings. It always creates a lot of engagement, it seems. So this is an example of what can be done with reference with the data that we already possess through the real estate robot. And as our bank of data grows and grows, it becomes more and more valuable. I think we can automate better stories with this data, telling more about recent developments in the local neighborhoods. But I think we also can do some real investigative reporting, looking into blind spots in real estate market and looking into winners and losers in these markets. So hopefully we'll get around to do so. Yeah. I also think it's important to have advocates and ambassadors for automated content in the newsroom, and luckily I do, both in Bergens Tidende and throughout in Schibsted. So some of those has helped me a lot with the work. So thank you, guys. Another trick to get the newsroom on board is possible to downscale the whole robot bit. And actually, Bergens Tidende is not downscaling it, rather the opposite. We're branding this as a robot service to readers. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure how smart that is, but we're kind of stuck with it now. It's a gimmick. It can be regarded as catchy, I suppose, but it's also somewhat alienating, sending thoughts to assembly line production, which, to be honest, this of course is. But again, hopefully with the cleverness that makes it relevant. So just some food for thought. I don't have the answer to that question, but I think it can be perceived from 2 angles at least. I actually look at automated journalism like a form of traditional, to use that term, data journalism. We got chunks of data we would like the readers to be presented to. And instead of doing it by numbers, listings, and figures, we do it by text and illustration. But the principle is the same. Gather a large volume of information, process it, and make it understandable. It's a set of structure and rules producing a text in a news language and in a news styling. And out of the grinder comes first the small data, the hyperlocal information. Then the data adds size throughout the text. which actually brings me to our latest product, also developed in collaboration with the United Robots. It's a service based on the same technology and thinking as the real estate robot. And as I understand it, it's not by default possible to reproduce to other markets due to restrictions of data. But I nevertheless think it can be inspirational in regards to what is possible to achieve with automation. And it's called an annual report robot, and it's a company guide, so to speak, to the municipality of Bergen and the region of Vestland. And what the robot does is to produce an article for each company with earnings higher than a set sum. For now, that is 3 million Norwegian kroner. And that means that pretty much every business, be it a corner shop, a restaurant, a factory, you name it, gets coverage. Again, it's small data becoming big data. And in Norway, a company's annual report is public information. This gives us access to various key numbers and revenues and margins. And we also can have, for instance, a 5-year look back. On top of this, again, you can add a layer and look at whole businesses and industries from a local perspective. Which restaurants are doing it best in Bergen, which food stores have the highest earnings, which are the companies with the highest CEO salaries, and so forth, and so on. There's a lot of journalistic editorial possibilities that will stem from these automated texts, I think. So this service is just launched, but with some very promising results. Actually, several of the articles have been some of the best read stories altogether on the day published. At one point during the news day, a story about a little but well-known hotel in Bergen was actually the most read article. And also an automated story about one of the most prominent fish restaurants in the city made it into the top list, probably due to the massive deficit as a consequence of the pandemic restrictions. And actually today, a story about a local fishing boat making the catch of a lifetime money-wise is doing very well. And these are companies in Bergen which seldom, rarely, or never have been written about before. So I think it adds value to our general coverage of the local business life. And I should mention, in all fairness, that where the real estate robot now is 100% automated, I do some last-minute tuning on some company stories, adding pictures, for instance, providing some context, perhaps changing the headline to the front page. As for now, I spend say an hour each day to do stuff like this. Time well spent, I think, which brings us up to another interesting perspective: how you can combine manual and automated journalism to make better stories and also free up time. That has to be a topic for another session, I think. So, how about the business model? One important goal when we started out with the automated text was to add a new revenue stream. As for the most media houses, Bergens Tidende is trying to become digitally sustainable. That's going rather well, actually, with us recently reaching 50,000 digital subscribers. And this is a recent picture of the newsroom celebrating this milestone, which has been a goal for us for many years. But in order to secure further growth, we need to keep adding revenue streams. And as the number of digital subscribers grow, the either-or dilemma between subscription revenues and ad revenues becomes less and less prominent, I think. With more and more paying readers, we can aim for both sources of income with a lot more strength, which of course is a win-win situation. All right. You guys are probably like me, loving all the numbers you can get. So here are some. So here are a few. As mentioned, 13,000 articles since launching last summer, and if we add the annual report robot, which has been very busy the last couple of weeks and months, we're closing in on 20,000. If not any day during the autumn. In total, we've had over 1,000 subscription sales. And let me emphasize that we don't sell subscriptions solely based on this service. So the number of people buying a whole, so this number is the total amount of people buying a whole BT subscription from a robot article. So in that sense, I think the real estate robot is actually a massive success. When it comes to sales, probably can be regarded as a more moderate one when it comes to clicks, but a million, as mentioned, as Mark mentioned, introducing me, is a decent number. Perhaps not overwhelming, but it's a decent number, I think. What is actually quite overwhelming is the click-through rate on the annual report robot, which is we have an average of about 10,000 clicks since starting, and some days it has been close to 50,000 actually. So that's for a paper our size, that's a pretty decent number. Okay, so I've been asked to say something about return on investment, and that's this is going to be a ballpark figure, of course. We covered the journalistic purpose. We aim for a better total experience for the readers, but of course we want this to pay off as well. So question being, does it? And these kinds of calculations are always a bit tricky. And I'm not quite sure how interesting actual numbers are due to differences in the markets and size and what's not. But what I can say, with 1,000 subscriptions a year and 1 million page views, this should generate about 1.5 to perhaps 2 million Norwegian kroner for Bergens Tidende on a yearly basis, which then is about $230,000 or 200,000 euros. Again, ballpark figure. Based on lifetime value of subscriber and average revenue per user. And these are the Bergens Tidende numbers. Of course, those will vary in other markets and for other sized media houses. But still interesting, I think. And on top of that comes the loyalty of readers already subscribing. A service like this adds value, which again hopefully prohibits churn. Yeah. So how am I doing on time now, Mark?
Yeah, we're absolutely fine, Jan Stian.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm soon to be finished. So okay, loyalty is one thing. It's impossible to set a price tag on that, but I'm convinced it's rather valuable. I have to tell you though, this is based on gut feeling more than actual analysis, because we haven't done that for now. and I also think it's interesting to see what further possibilities can be explored. Could there be some kind of sponsorship involved? Could we create some new advertising formats? Is it possible to capitalize more on the uniqueness of hyperlocal content or the amount of statistics we're building? I think the possibilities lies ahead of us. Of course, there are some initial costs, but as I've been saying for the last couple of months, the real estate texts have been completely self-engined. So it's pretty much monthly fee to United Robots and the data provider, and that's it. So I would this profit. It's not a breathtaking amount, I guess, but it's a new revenue stream which help us in the direction of digital sustainability, and we have other similar streams in the making, hopefully. So yes, that was a quick introduction to Bergens Tidende's strategy and on automated text. So now me and Cecilia are happy to take some questions from all of you.
Thank you very much, Jan Stian. That was really, really interesting. And thank you, Celia. It's a brilliant story, isn't it? And I know this is the second webinar we've done with United Robots. So I've got to say, I'm really impressed with the work you guys are doing all the time. And this is such an amazing tale and such a great case study to showcase what you are actually doing. So thank you, both of you, for that. Firstly, let me just go back to the start then and maybe bring Celia back in at this point. How complex was it all when you did the initial deployment with BT? And you know, that automated content is a big operation. Anyone on this call who's thinking, you know, hey, I should be doing this too, but maybe they're put off maybe by the concept or the perception, maybe it's going to be very complicated for them. Is it so?
I'll say a few words first, but I think Jan, who was actually more involved in the hands-on stuff, has more to add. I would say, of course, you don't start out with a big project like BT, you start small. And so the first step is to kind of just write about the single sales. And that stuff is quite straightforward. And anything that needs to be sorted out in terms of data and deployment is managed by us. And then, of course, Jan Stian was involved in sort of expanding on the stories, and with BT there are more than one data source, for example, but that's not where we began, and that's not where we would normally begin if we start a new project. Jan Stian?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question and a bit a difficult one as well. But as I was saying, I started out in January, and I hadn't really I haven't got a clue how to attack this and how to do it. But then we launched a couple of months thereafter. So in hindsight, I will say it has been surprisingly easy to get this service up and running, and that is thanks to good colleagues in Schibsted, but also in the United Robots, obviously. And I also think it's very important to, if you set out to do this, that you have to have internal ownership. I do other stuff in Bergens Tidende, but these texts and this service has become, quite a baby of mine, and it gets prioritized thereafter. So it's not as complicated as you think, because the tools are good, and if you have the data as well, you've actually come far off, but you have to. It has to be top of mind. it can't be second of mind or third of mind. You have to have it top of mind.
Okay, and Jan Stian, you talked about getting the newsroom on board with all of this, and you highlighted, how you show that, that this content is automated, etc. Question, I guess, is, if the content is relevant and if it's of value and if it's targeted well, I mean, do the readers care if it's automated or not?
Well, that's a good question. I think this perhaps is as important for the journalist as for the readers to, draw the line between automated content and manually crafted content. I actually think that's fine. Transparency is important. So telling people how thing is done is probably a sort of thing media industry.
Transparency thing, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, should be better on in a broader perspective.
Because I presume you've had no negative feedback from readers about all of this.
Not a lot. We had some readers claiming that Bergens Tidende now is firing their reporters and replacing them with robots, which simply not is the case, of course. Actually, since starting with this a couple of years ago, we have hired more journalists. So there are more journalists working in the newsroom in Bergens Tidende now as when we started on this. So that's.
And Cecilia, just a slight tangent to that for you. I mean, there's an old favorite question, isn't it, about robots stealing journalists' jobs and the fear of, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, with the clients that you work with across the world, what's actually happening in newsrooms who use them? Do you see any evidence of that at all?
I mean, normally, of course, I'm not going to say that there are no freelancers who've had their gigs cut because of automation. I'm sure that's happened. But actually, the clients we work with now and the new ones coming in as well, it's these are the groups that are putting investment into local journalism. This is all about expanding your coverage and providing a better service. And in Scandinavia, it's very everybody, all local groups are focused on the subscription business. And if you can't prove that you're more relevant than anything else, then you're not going to get subscribers. And Gota Media, which I mentioned before briefly, they actually, since they've started publishing they're deploying the robots, but they have also in the meantime hired 25 journalists, which is quite a lot for not a huge group. And we're seeing the same in the States. It's the people we talk to are the people who believe in investing in local journalism. So it's a bit of a fallacy, I would say.
And just before you get into other areas here, I mean, Sheila Gallagher in the States is asking, can bylines be personalized or does bot have to appear? Yeah.
Oh, that's where we don't have to have the bot in the byline. Of course, that's rather a gimmick, I guess. So we could just easily just drop it because also we have the disclaimer, which is very prominent in the text. So it's kind of double up. So yeah.
All the clients we have right now are transparent about a robot writing the stories, but of course it's up to the publisher. It's up to you. Yeah.
Of course. I've got a question from Emily Sweet from the Australian community media saying, do you have data scientists involved in building these robots, or are there any other skills required?
Well, we do, but you don't need it at the publisher end. Because that comes
to them from you direct. They don't need that,
No, that is the job we do. That is what is involved. We analyze the data, and that is where we find the stories, and we then build the text from that. And then you receive the text when they're done. No, that's you don't need to have data scientists at all on the publisher end.
I've got Ashish from Summit Media Group in Singapore saying, did you get organizational naysayers from the more traditional journalism circles while embarking on the project? And if so, were you able to counter it with the promise of things like data and AI?
Well, as I've said, it's there were some voices, concerned voices regarding marking the text, but very little resistance in the newsroom actually, and I think that has to do with the reporters seeing the genuine value of these texts, and also seeing that these can contribute to investigative journalism, and that we can build manually journalism on top, build manually crafted content on top of these stories. So surprisingly little, I will say.
Okay. Randall Keith from the Bay Area News Group in the US is saying a very fundamental question, I guess. It sounded like you're bringing in more revenue than the cost of the data or maybe the United Robot fees and whatever they are, once the front end setup cost is paid. So if you include staff time, is it still a profit margin? And if so, how big is that?
Well, yes, it is. Of course, I'm working on this, but I'm not. I'm working on a lot of other things as well. But I spent some time working, developing, working with United Robots on these texts. So that has to, of course, come when you do the math. That has to be bear in mind. But as I'm saying, for now, after working on the real estate robot under a year, it's now completely self-engined. So I don't do nothing. Nobody in the newsroom are working with this. It's 100% automated. So you have some initial costs, of course, if you include my work. But the beauty of this is that if I'm to work with the real estate robot further, it's coming up with new services and doing new stuff with it, not to maintain it. So yeah.
And just staying in the States from Advanced Local, JJ Velasquez is asking, what sort of work is involved on the front end of the real estate transaction articles? Are the data sets being provided by the respective agencies in the right format for automated reporting, or does it require things like data cleaning and input, etc.?
No.
All of that is taken care of by United Robots. So if we start sending, so in the States we're working with a couple of different providers. It slightly varies, the data providers, but that is not something the publisher needs to work on or be concerned with, other than, of course, you'll know who they are and everything. But the work is done by us. Yeah.
And the examples I showed from the real estate robot, that's how they come to us. We don't do nothing. This is how it all appears when they come into our system, and they go out the same way. Self-automated.
A great question from Nicholas Russo from October Group in Argentina is saying, from a privacy issue from the owners of the real estate, maybe they don't want people to know they live in one of the, say, the top 100 most expensive houses in Bergen. Are there any issues around that?
Yeah, there are some issues around that. That's a good question. And we had some issues around that. And actually, when we started, we included name of both buyers and sellers, but we, after some weeks or a month or so, we decided to cut out name of the buyer, because we don't want the name to be too connected with the physical address in that respect. So we have taken that into consideration, but in Norway, this information is public and has actually always been published in the newspaper, then in the format of listings, people buying and selling houses. So it's it's common.
And Nicholas
really
is sorry, Celia, carry on.
Well, it does vary from country to country, what the sort of what the tradition is, or what is sort of passable, or what's okay from a privacy point of view. So we have some clients who leave the names out completely. So it's really up to you. And I mean, one way in Sweden, everybody publishes both buyer and seller. But that can of course be tweaked. And as Jan said, you can test and see how that goes. But the data is, I mean, it's always public data in some way. But for example, we will not probably be able to launch the real estate text in Germany because it's not that country, the culture in that country is not, that wouldn't be okay for people to read about sales in this way. So it does depend on the market.
And I could mention that we have quite a pragmatic view on this. So if, for instance, a person reading about his property complains, and I don't want his name in the article, even though he's the seller, we'll drop it. We don't go into arguments; we just drop it.
Right, and the other part of Nicholas's question was, do you have any benefits from SEO since you started producing this many articles?
Jan Stian?
Jan?
Come again? I didn't quite.
Have you had any benefits from SEO since you were producing this many articles? Actually, that's interesting because as I was saying, we have sold a lot of subscriptions, and you would think that the subscriptions merely come from or solely come from the front page or the Bergens Tidende, but a lot and very much more than other content comes from Google. Which has to do, people know about the service, but the amount of stuff, the amount of stories perhaps is too overwhelming, so they go to Google and find the stuff. So that's something we also are looking into, but it's search engine friendly, I can tell you so much. Cecilia, a question for you really. I mean, there's been a lot of concern, especially in the COVID era, about trustworthiness and of media, etc. Are there any? Have you come across any issues regarding that in your experiences across the world?
Well, I mean, with the technology we have, if the data that goes in is correct, then the text that comes out are correct, normally speaking. Right. Of course, there are issues. It has happened, of course it does. But then we can trace the problem and we can correct it. And I mean, a robot will only make the same mistake once, basically. Once it's corrected, then it's corrected forever.
And just while you're there, Celia, Lars Anderson's asking, how does the robot actually publish the stories? How does it determine when to publish? How does it spread the frequency during a day, etc.?
Well, that is something, as far as I know, and Jan Stian, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is something we agree with the publisher. So for example, it could be that we get all the real estate data from the source once a month, but the publisher would like it spread out over, every second day or whatever. That's set up our end, and it's up to the publisher, basically.
And finally, one last question for you again, Celia. Is this for print only, or can it or has it been adapted to things like radio and TV? That's from John O'Lone.
No, it hasn't yet. As far as I know, it's only for digital. Well, when you say print, I kind of slightly reacted, but no, for text.
I see what you're saying,
yes,
text, yes.
Mm-hmm. So far,
but it could be,
okay, fine. I'm not going to say no. I don't know. We're only at the beginning of the road.
I'm going to say this is the start of a long journey, I guess, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
Well, listen, guys, thank you so much. We've run out of time, sadly. Celia, you mentioned earlier there's a playbook coming up, which I'm sure everyone want to get their hands on. What's the background to that? When can they get to see that?
I would say, 2 weeks at the most. And if everybody's happy for me to do so, I will send it out when it's done. So you don't have to wait, ask for it. I'll push it out.
Okay, perfect. Well, listen, thanks to United Robots for supporting this webinar. I think it's been really, really good. And thanks to Jan Stian for sharing your experiences using the technology, which it's a brilliant story. And I'd like to revisit this maybe in another year's time and see where you've got to now. So thank you both for sharing. It's been brilliant. Thank you everyone for joining us. We have run out of time sadly, but let me just tell you quickly about what's going to happen next week. Same time, same channel next week. We're going to be having Chris Barton, who's the Chief Product Officer from Gannett, from USA Today, etc., to the USA Today network. He's going to be discussing using emerging technologies, things like crypto and AR and AI to build immersive customer experiences that drive engagement and attract new audiences and build communities and open up new business models. So one of the world's largest media groups will open its doors to us next week and share its technology secrets. So it's not to be missed. You can register for that now on the website. That's it, everyone. Thanks again to United Robots. Thanks again to Jan Stian from Bergens Tidende. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.